industry itself. I started my career as a software analyst for Barclays. Then I gradually shifted over to engineering role at Amazon with Prime Video, and then slowly I transitioned into senior engineer role at Amazon Ads. And today I'll be sharing some of the insights of how like interview process look like, and especially around how from application a journey looks like for a candidate, and from the interviewer side to extending an offer. Now we'll go over to Parminder as well. He's my colleague and he'll also be introducing himself. And then we'll quickly go over the agenda.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining this session. I'm Parminder, working with Amazon for last 5 years. Overall industry experience of 16 plus years, where first 10 to 11 years of my journey were with consulting companies, worked on multiple programs with Amazon, Google, Facebook. I have a flavor of almost like, if not all, like majority of the fund companies. So in this session, I will be sharing how product manager or business analyst or technical program manager's experience can, help you uh, derive your journey from an application to offer.
Quickly going over the agenda. So for today's agenda, what we have is like we'll go over the interview process breakdown. First, we'll talk about how to perfectly build a resume that do increase the chances of it being selected. We'll go over the do's and don'ts that one should follow while building his own resume, and we'll just go over quickly some of the places where person can look for a job, how the shortlisting strategy look like from the other side of the interviewing like a whole playbook, what exactly the recruiter or the technical recruiters look for in the resume, and how the systems work behind the scene when it gets to shortlisting some of the resumes. And then we'll quickly jump over the interview process, quickly go over like how the interview process look like at big tech companies. Then we slowly transition over to how the coding round looks like, what are the top 5 mistakes that one can make in the coding round, what exactly a coding round should look like when it comes to interviewers' expectation, as well as like how the candidate should prepare for it. And then we'll slowly go over the system design, because that's also one of the typical round that happens when it comes to technical job hiring. And then at the end, we'll quickly go over the behavioral methods, like what exactly one should be preparing when it comes to the behavioral interview round. This is the biggest or hotly debated interview round, where people or the candidates might not have insights of like what to answer when it comes to answering about the experience or the project work that they have done in the university or at internship. And then we can probably like go over the quick starter plan for somebody who have recently started looking out for a job. And then we'll at the end we'll share some of the prep resources with you guys.
Yeah. So we are not going to spend too much time on this screen. Hopefully everybody is well aware of, the hiring process, where you start with a CV, start searching for a job, apply for that job. If you're shortlisted, get into the interview, and then, go through the interview rounds on site, off site, depending on where you are. And then finally the offer negotiation stage and getting to an offer. So without spending more time, let's get into the very first topic that we would like to cover, which has been very well debated and very hotly, discussed around, like why or what mistakes students or even anybody, even experienced employees are making when, defining, getting selected for an interview. So as you might have already Googled, or some of the research you might have done, you might have seen that all the companies across the globe, like almost 98% companies across the globe use application tracking system. It could be any application tracking system where a candidate first go and submit their resume. And almost all those application tracking systems that are in place as on today, they look for specific keywords. There are defined criteria per company has, and almost like the numbers are alarming, like almost 75 to 80% of the resumes don't even make it through the first screening. So there are a lot of reasons for that. We can quickly chat about that and how to get over those, the first hurdle. And like to name few, we can say the keywords that we use in our resume that we put forward, right? The formatting that we use in our resume that we put forward. Do we try to make it more fancier? Do we try to include more images to just make it look more beautified instead of some of the key things that we should be targeting for is, like rather than trying to make it beautified, make sure that you include the keywords that the scanner is looking for, whether you have tailored made that resume for that specific job opening, or is it a generic resume that you created and you have been just blindly applying to all the job openings with the same resume, irrespective if it includes or does not include the key keywords that the scanners will look for. And are you quantifying the achievements that you had in maybe in your academic journey, or maybe if you are an experienced employee, that how and what you delivered and what impact that delivery had? I think these are like very, very common pitfalls that we have been seeing across, which are failing the resumes to screen through the first hurdle. Vasu, you want to add anything to that?
No, just to add more on top of what you said. So definitely, like there are like automated tracking systems and application tracking systems, which basically filters out a lot of resume. But some of the things that can help you get more probability of your resume not being filtered is using the right format and the right keywords, which works for like 90 or 95% of the companies. Like generally when you're building a resume, you shouldn't be like writing things which doesn't even make sense or doesn't stand out or doesn't show what you are capable of or what skill set you're building to the company, or the role that you're applying for. So definitely some of those things would be like how you are free phrasing your work experience or the project work. That plays a huge role. So instead of like just saying that I built this service and without showing or bragging about its impact, you should be writing it that, okay, I built an X service which basically added this much value to the tool or the project or the problem that you solved, so that at least it's very clear, and those things do get do increase the chances of it not being filtered out, because it is showing some kind of like value coming out from your resume, that this candidate is capable of doing XYZ things, which might help and build your more chances to getting it to the next stage.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that scale is very, very important, because when we apply for any job opening and the company would like to ensure that they are shortlisting a candidate who has already built or delivered a project or a deliverable at that scale. So that is a good call out there, Vasu. Thank you for that. And let's quickly chat about like what are the different platforms where you can look for jobs, right? I'm sure you might have experienced of searching job openings for more than what we have listed here. So these are like some of them, but I don't want to go into each and every. All these platforms have their own pros and cons. But main thing that I want to highlight is, and quickly share an example about, is the magic of networking. Like yes, we know that in the previous slide we understood that there are ATS systems in place, that system that filters out almost 75 to 80% of the resumes, right? Like how can you bypass that? One is you have a gun resume which can make you pass that, or second one, which is the most important and where we personally don't spend so much time, is having a personal networking into a company, not just a company, into an org. Let's say you want to apply for Amazon ads, you want to apply for Amazon S3, you want to apply for Amazon what do you say, quick suit, right? Wherever you want to apply for, do you have connections in that particular org who can refer you to a specific job opening? I have seen that magic happening where one of my friend was looking for a job. He asked me, hey Parminder, there is a opening in your previous org, I saw that you have one way or another worked for that organization, can you refer me to that? I did that. I got his resume put forward in front of the hiring manager. That hiring manager straight away gave it to the recruiter, and recruiter called him. So that's how quickly it can be. So I think more than spending yes, we have to spend time on finding the job openings. So job opening portal, I think the most top one should be every specific company's job listing portal. That is one. And second should be networking. Make use of your network, have your known ones in that specific company refer you to that job opening and put your resume in front of the hiring manager. Vasu, anything you would like to add to that?
No, yeah, pretty much like the job searching portals or the websites are all clear to everybody. There are like plenty amount of sites where you can apply for jobs, but one recommendation would be always start with trying to find some kind of connection to the company where you're trying to apply, so that at least instead of like blindly applying, you have a chance of getting it referred through somebody. And the next would be instead of like going through third party sites, if there is a job opening that you know about X company, I encourage that you directly apply through the company's website rather than like going through Indeed or ZipRecruiter. That also sometimes adds more chances of getting your profile selected because your application came directly through the company's website.
Yeah. All right. I think we have briefly talked about the strategies that can help you shortlist. We don't want to spend too much time on this one. We have seen like tailor make your resume, highlight the quantifiable achievements. Make sure you are definitely quantifying the achievements. Focus on the core requirements of the job. Right? Don't have a generic resume for each and every job opening. Please, please, please make sure you are tailor making a resume for that specific job opening. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, but with the help of AI, you can definitely cut short that time. Do spend that extra effort. And as we said, like formatting does matter, but don't try to make it too flashy or anything. Keep it simple, keep it impactful, and make sure you are covering all the requirements that are asked for. And I didn't talk about the first one, which is listed on the top, networking. Make use of the network. I think these are the key strategies which can help you get shortlisted, if not for all, but for the majority of the job openings that you apply for.
Yeah. Also, to add more on top of that, shortlisting is like one aspect of your resume. But once it gets shortlisted, your resume is what dictates or tells interviewer about your skills or your work experience or who you are. So definitely, when you're trying to write your personal projects or any sorts of thing in that resume, try to use phrasing in a way that it shows what you did, because a lot of times at university people do work on a group project and not a personal project, and that sometimes plays a huge role in terms of like you describing, even though you're talking about a group project, but you are describing what role you played in that group project and what was your contribution. So instead of like saying that we built this, we did that, try to use your I strategy and say that I, being a part of this group project, build an API which reduced the latency to pull some artifacts from XYZ storage, and it added this much kind of value. We saw the 30% reduction in the total response generation time, whatnot. So definitely. While framing this, use your contribution. Try to if not adding like group projects, try to think of like any personal projects that you have built, so that you can independently talk about what you did, not what a team of 4 or 5 people did, because it's your resume, not your team's or a friend's resume. So definitely anything that you're writing, try to think about what you have contributed and how you can highlight that in a way that it's meaningful and it's easy to understand by somebody who's reading your resume for the first time. Keep it very short. You don't have to build like 2 3 page resume. One page is enough. I'll At the end of this recording, I'll probably be sharing you with some of the resume formats that I've seen, which are ex- uh, like accepted by all the companies, and definitely you can follow that to build a resume. Yes, we can move on to the
Yeah.
next slide.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I think stay away from faking anything in the resume because the interviewer might pick on one thing that you were trying to hide under the carpet, and your whole interview can just spin around that particular thing that we are trying to fake it. So let's not put anything just for sake of mentioning it. If you are not able to talk about that particular project or achievement uh, at length, avoid it. All right. I think I skipped one. Yes, Vasu, over to you.
Yeah, so let's assume that yes, we were able to pass the first hurdle, which was your resume shortlisting. Now that your resume got shortlisted, you got a call from the recruiter that, hey, you are moving to the next round, which typically ends up being a phone screen. And then after the phone screen, you get like an on-site. So typically, this whole process, as you know, consists of like one phone screen on-site interview consists of like one or two coding rounds, similar to how your phone screen went, and then the system design, and then one or two behavioral rounds, depends on like how you did in first round. And then at the end, generally you get like one bar raiser interview, which is sort of like an Amazon concept, but most of the company are leaning towards having two behavioral rounds, which you can break it down as like one sort of like a behavioral, and one which is mix of tech and behavioral, which we call it bar raiser round. So that's how the interview process look like today. And typically what happens is that once your phone screen is going good, then only you get invited to on-site. And some companies on on-site also, depending on your first two rounds, if you have done good or bad, they decide whether you will have more rounds, or they will end the interview early. And once everything goes smooth, the recruiter extends an offer to you, and that's how the interview process look like today. One thing which I want to highlight is that for technical roles, yes, coding is the skill that everybody expects you to have, and that's bare minimum that tech roles can expect from you. But that's not the only skill which interviewers today are looking for. As you know that there are like so many AI systems and whatnot. Coding is like a very easy job. Anybody can do that now. Behavior or your interpersonal skill is like what matters the most in today's world in getting you the offer. Like yes, if you fail at the coding level, you will get an instant reject. But that's not the only skill which I want to highlight is something that interviewers are looking for technical roles today. Like today, vibe coding is something that anybody can do. The skill that matters most is how somebody can articulate and understand the problem and decompose it and give the direction to the AI model so that it can generate or produce the right output for the company. We can move on to the next slide. Yes. So typically, like phone screen consists of a coding round. This particularly is not just about phone screen. It applies to any sort of like technical coding round that you are applying for. I'll quickly go over like what the interviewer's persona or perspective look like when it comes to judging a candidate on a technical coding round. So a lot of time people think that memorizing the code, that okay, this is what I have learned through lead code and whatnot will help me get clearing the coding round. But that's a biggest misconception people have. Interviewers definitely, yes, coding is important, but they're not looking for somebody to memorize an algorithm and say that yes, if I give him a problem like two sum or find the shortest path in a graph, and he's able to do that, I'll probably like select him. That's not the mental model that interviewer comes when it comes to coming taking the interview of a candidate. What we are really looking for is the skill, like how you break a problem, how you try to solve that problem, how you're using your brain to argue different edge cases, what is like your thought process going on when it comes to giving you a problem that you've never seen. And definitely, like people think that if I'm unable to solve this problem at an optimized level, then I might get rejected. That's not the case. I have seen so many times people getting selected even if they were not able to produce the optimized result, because the way they tried to tackle that problem was impressive enough for me to move to that person to the next round. So when it comes to any sort of coding, like technical screen, my recommendation to all the candidates who are appearing for those rounds are follow this basic principle of like five things. One is decomposition. When it comes when you're given a problem, instead of like just directly jumping onto that, hey, this is the problem, I know, I remember it from the past, I'll just quickly jump onto implementing it. That's not what interviewer is looking for. And that's a biggest red flag you can give to an interviewer. So always start with understanding the problem. Even though if you know, try to decompose it so that you can explain it to the interviewer, because it's more about a pair programming, not just your test of like how quickly you can solve a problem. It's more about how you communicate, how you articulate what you have understood of this problem. So always try to decompose the problem by breaking it down so that anybody who is even in a non-technical role can understand how your mental model is about solving a problem when it's something fairly new to you. So before jumping onto the solution or writing single line, always think about like how you can articulate and decompose the problem into sub problems or smaller problems, or just like break it down. Communication is the key. Communicate your thought process along the way, whatever is coming on your mind, whatever step you're doing, while it is decomposing or maybe like writing it down. You have to be communicative enough, because nobody wants to like hire somebody who is like just a one man army and not a team player. So definitely communication plays a huge role, and that gives a signal to the interviewer that yes, this guy can articulate and explain the problem even to somebody who is new or fairly new to the job. And that skill is like biggest key player that interviewer looks for, the communication skill. Then a lot of time what people does is they memorize the code and they just jump onto implementing that. And a lot of times I've seen people using different variable names, like a short form, like maybe ANMQ, like that. That's also a red flag. People do not like something which is like something that you can only understand. You want to write a code which is like a good quality code that can go into a production without any issues. So instead of using short abbreviated keywords for variable naming and whatnot, I recommend people to write any readable format strings used as a variables. Then another thing which plays a key role is that oftentimes people memorize the solution and they just implement it. They don't walk through it. They don't run the edge cases. They often miss the edge cases. So whenever you're giving a problem, you need to think about what all sorts of like possible scenarios can happen with this problem, and how I can probably like handle all the edge cases. And that also like plays a very important role in getting clearing the first round or the phone screen or any coding round. Then always know the complexity of the problem, whatever solution you are implementing. Even though it's a brute force, you should be able to articulate what a complexity it is coming of. And then slowly at the end, you can try to optimize it. If not optimizing, then say that what are the possible ways to optimize it. Moving on to the next slide.
Yeah, just one question, Vasu. I think many people who are listening, so they might have it. So it's like, let's say, as an interviewer, I came in. I am a candidate. You are an interviewer. You ask me a question, and I know the answer to it. I can solve it, but the answer is like, it's big. I can't fit it in 1 hour. So is it okay for the candidate to ask, okay, like this is how I'm fragmenting my answer. I'll not be able to cover all of it. So as an interviewer, do you want me to handle a particular use case, or prioritize one over another, so that if anything is missed toward the end, it is still fine?
Yeah, that's a good question and a great question as well. So none of the interviewers are looking for like a full-fledged complete solution out of like a 45 minutes round. What they're essentially judging a candidate is on his communication skill and how he's able to break down a bigger problem into sub-problem. So
Yeah.
while spending let's move to the next slide and then I'll walk through that answer that question. So if we look at the 45 minutes coding round, generally the 5 minutes or the starting 5 minutes is about asking a clarifying question or confirming that you understood the problem. And then
Mhm.
next 5 to 10 minutes is like thinking out loud, explaining what a solution can look like. And this is the stage where you say that, okay, this consists of this big problem and sub problems are these. When you explain the sub problem, that's where the interviewers jump in and say that, yes, I understood that this is a bigger problem. Maybe just go over that small piece and try to implement that so that I can understand you understood the problem well, and you know like what all pieces which can be a black box for now would work if we have fixed this one single piece of a puzzle. So generally that's when the bigger problem gets like disseminated into smaller problems, and generally interviewer just look for like one quicker or neater implementation and see like how you were able to break down the whole big problem into smaller chunks. And maybe he asked for like writing a pseudocode or just implement one particular piece of problem or a method. And that's how the bigger problems are tackled in a small short period of interview round. But the pattern says it all. It doesn't mean that 45-minute round is just 40 minutes for pure coding. Um, Only 10 to 15 minutes should be spent at coding. Rest all should be like a communication between interviewer and the candidate, where they both are exchanging thoughts in a way that, yes, you are able, as me as a candidate, is able to give my thought process of how I'm solving this problem to interviewer. And interviewer's job is to understand that and ask clarifying questions that, okay, yes, to get as many insights out of the candidate's problem solving skills so that he can write a good feedback about him. And oftentimes, this whole thing doesn't go well as we think of. People do make mistakes, people get panic, and they just start jump onto the implementing the solution. And that's where they miss giving the right data points to the interviewer for him to move him to the next stage. So that's pretty much like a 45 minutes coding round. This does not apply only to the phone screen, but this is mainly how any coding interview should be like tackled. Especially like time management is very critical because it's a small round. You don't want to like end up thinking out too much. If you don't know the solution, maybe start with the brute force implementation. A lot of times you will be facing with different problems that you might not have seen previously, but that doesn't mean that you'll this is for you to fail. The interviewers want you to succeed in a way that he wants to judge you for how you break the problem, not for something where he's asking you not to select you. So that mindset should not be there. And oftentimes people think that the question that I've seen, I should be getting that in the interview. And that can like make you clear one or two interviews around. But think about if you have to apply for multiple jobs, you can't expect that I always get a question that I've solved previously. You will somehow get a question which you might not have seen previously, or maybe something which is fairly new to you. And the only way for you to solve or clear those kind of rounds is when you start taking problem as a problem and thinking and using your skills to break it down, even though if the breakdown is not optimized or the right breakdown, but it shows how you were able to come to the right solution while starting from like point one. And maybe it's a brute force, but you were able to clarify, ask questions, and show the skills that yes, even if in a very difficult situation, you are able to navigate through the solution. And that's what the best interview would look like for somebody. That's my feedback on like how it should be tackled. We can move to the next slide about yeah, I already covered like five mistakes that usually like, kills the interview. Jumping straight to the code. Nobody wants to see candidate without discussing the problem, directly implementing the solution. That basically gives the signal that hey, the candidate has memorized the solution, or maybe he is like using some kind of tool to probably like write the solution without even like acknowledging that okay, he understood or not. That rather than being silent, you should be speaking about what your thought process look like. Even though you're unable to figure out a piece of a problem, you should be speaking about that hey, this is not clear to me. I'm trying to think, or maybe comparing two scenarios where this will work or this will not work. And that way interviewer will also jump in to help you move to the right thought process, so that at least he sees that if given some hints, he's able to solve the solution or not. So instead of being silent, communicate enough so that you can explain your thought process, or bring the interviewer and yourself onto the same page so that he can jump in and help you by giving some hints so that you come onto the right path to solve the problem. And then nobody wants to like directly jump into the optimized solution. People do first start with the brute force, discuss how the brute force solution look like, what it looks like, how you want to implement that, and then say what optimizations you can do. It's better to like present a solution which is a brute force rather than like just seeing a broken optimized solution and putting that in front of our interviewer. And then another thing is like not missing any edge cases. Yes, one two edge cases should be shown as an interviewer, that okay, yes, you are thinking about the corners, you're like knowing what actually can happen, and you're looking into those edge cases as well. That shows that yes, you are good at doing or writing code. You just don't like write it for the sake of making it work. You think about all the possible scenarios where it can break, and you take care of that. And one thing which I talked previously as well, that it's better to like use right variable naming when writing a code rather than just using abbreviations. Because if it's not readable, interviewer would put that as a feedback that hey, this candidate wrote a very bad code, or the code was not readable and I wasn't able to follow. And that's the biggest red flag, and straight away reject after that. So nobody wants to like present a working solution but in an unreadable way. You need to like write it in a way that it's understandable by anybody who is reading it. And that's the key to like succeed in coding interviews, be it a phone screen or just like round where you have like moved to the on-site and you still have to appear to like two technical coding rounds with engineers from the team. And now let's move towards the next piece of technical round, which is like system design. Um, this is also one of the interview that usually people get when they are trying to apply for like some sort of like medium level engineering role or senior level role. Although this appears and like fresh grad hiring as well, but this is not like a one piece where from a university hire interviewer will be looking for like multiple things to be in place for candidate that hey yes system design should be picture like perfect from a university hire or not. But I'll just go over like a quick framework of like what the typical mindset look like of an interviewer when it comes to system design, and slowly talk over the framework, how it should be tackled. So this round basically is used by interviewer to judge how, given a big component design or big service design, engineer is able to think about or visualize how the system would look like and work. It's more about like seeing the engineering skill of an engineer, not just like coding, how he is able to like break the bigger problem of building a service onto smaller components and able to articulate why and what the reasoning was behind it. So generally the framework that I follow or I advise everybody to follow is that whenever you're given a system design coding question or the design question, try to spend like 5 minutes in understanding the requirements. What happens most of the time is that people again follow the mental model that they want a system design question that they have seen previously, and what they do is they just start drawing the black boxes that okay, this is API, this is a load balancer, this is this and that, and that's a biggest red flag. It's not about how many technology or the components of computer science you know. It's more about how a business requirement, given in a very vague terminology, has been broken down into a way that you have gathered the right requirements or the inputs to build a system. So always start with asking questions about the problem that has been given to you. Try to understand the functional requirement, non-functional requirement, and the scale estimates. When it comes to functional requirements, ask questions about what business problem you're trying to solve. What is the expected output? Why do we want to do this, that, and whatnot? And then non-functional requirement are mostly around what would be the latency, what would be the storage limit, what's the throughput, and whatnot. And then try to understand what will be the scale of this service, like how many users would be using it, what will be the TPS, what will be the QPS, what will be the storage limit size, and whatnot. This shows the mental model that okay, an engineer is taking the requirements and then only he'll be able to design a system. And that's the fundamental process that everybody follows in a big tech company when it comes to designing a system. And if you are following this particular principle, then that increases your chances of being selected rather than jumping directly into a design. So always spend like 5 to 10 minutes getting the requirements, then next 5 to 10 minutes drawing the high level design that okay, based on the requirements, this is what I think should a system look like. You draw the picture on a whiteboard or use any online tool to draw the system, and then based on that design, interviewer might ask you underlying questions to clarify the requirements so that he can get a sense of whether the design is right or wrong. Generally what ends up is that he understood that yes, the design is overall looking correct, and then he asks you to dive deeper into the low level design of one specific components, and that's where the dive deep happens. He tries to understand your reasoning about why you draw the system like this, how you will be doing a cache validation, or what will be the database look like, what will be the schema of database, how much sharding would you be like using, and some of those core data like system design principles. And then at the end, he'll try to ask you about how you will scale the system from one user to maybe hundreds of users. And that's where like he tries to understand and points out some of the bottlenecks based on the design, and see like if you're able to quickly transition your design from the current place to a place where you can understand that yes, now this was the earlier design in a way that it can handle a particular load. But now when it comes to increasing the load, what kind of scaling techniques would you be like applying? Are you able to understand the bottlenecks in the design that you have drawn? Because it's always a trade-off. Nobody gets a first design, or nobody builds a service which is like fundamentally or like works for all the use cases. You solve a problem for particular use cases, and then the problem expands, or the use cases increase, and that's when a transition from one design to another is required. And he's trying to understand your reasoning around whether you're able to come to that conclusion or not, or how you are going to scale your service. What is the driving factor in your mind to make changes in the ongoing production system, and how will you handle that? Generally, that's how the system design goes. Again, it's the communication is the key here as well. You have to communicate enough in order to explain your thought process, as well as like what your mental model is about a problem and how you're trying to solve this problem. Nobody wants to see a memorized solution on a whiteboard, drawn in a boxes, and just some lines connecting them. Interviewer wants to understand the thought process behind those boxes, why you put a load balancer instead of like just using API gateway or whatnot. Some of those decisions do come, like some of those questions do come up or pop up in the interview, and people should be prepared about each and every reasoning about why they used it. Even if you're using it because you need to handle a request, you can say that yes, I added a load balancer because I wanted to balance the load around my service, and that's a pretty solid answer to start with. But if you're just saying that you don't know the answer, you just use because you have seen, that's a red flag. You should be prepared about each and every boxes that you're drawing and the reasoning behind it, why you think that this is required.
Yeah.
Because everything comes down to cost as well. He'll try to see your reasoning about, are you just like superficially building a system just for the sake of building, or you're thinking about cost as well. Nobody wants to build a service which is highly expensive and is costing more than earning money out of it, right? So those kind of reasoning helps a lot when it comes to system design. Moving on to the next slide, Parmita,
Yeah.
do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. I think I have seen it in the interviews that we have, like technical program managers or the product manager side. I think it's very important for a candidate also to clearly have a communication with the interviewer to outline that candidate is putting in scope and things that he's not considering to be part of the scope when he's going to draw, right? So that he is clear that, okay, these are my requirements which my design will cater to, and these requirements 3 4 5 is not something I'll be designing for. So what is in scope, what is not in scope, clearly outlined, so that we can not get into the tricky cornering situations towards the end where he will be like, okay, why did you not think of that? Instead of we'll saying, okay, I have already called it out as out of scope for this design discussion. So I think that will be a key parameter as well to clearly articulate that. All right, moving over to the next one.
Yeah. So 5 things that I would like to highlight. This might play a role for university hiring as well as like for some of the people who are looking for the like senior level or like maybe experience level engineering job. Whenever you're appearing for a system design, this is the blueprint that you should be keeping in your mind. Be it any problem that you're given in a system design. Uh, Talk about the numbers. If you're given a problem, let's say to design a URL shortener service, always talk about how much the request per seconds you will be handling with that URL shortener service. That gives an insight of like that, okay, yes, candidate do care about the numbers so that he can come up with a wise solution which can handle that much of load, rather than building a highly optimized solution that can handle billions of requests. Asking this question that if we are only building something to get like 10,000 or 15,000 requests a day or maybe a second, there will be like obviously a different choice of like tooling or the infrastructure that you will be spinning up, right? So always talk about the numbers, that what is the estimation of the load that we'll be getting, what will be the storage of data, what will be the storage policies. Do we want to keep the data for like a month or just a week? And this gives like a sense to the interviewer that yes, candidate is wise enough to think about these things early on while planning system design, and he can take care of the requirements very cleanly and in a very smart way. And then instead of like just going into designing a distributed system, I've seen a lot of people jumping directly into building a distributed system, that they'll say that this is a microservice to do this, that, and whatnot. Always start with like a monolith system first. This basically gives a sense of a holistic design coming in place, and then After that, try to optimize it. It's more like you start with a brute force, which can be like one system doing n number of jobs, and then you're using some computer science principles to say that a system should be only doing one thing, and then justifying that ask and breaking it down into multiple subsystems. So rather than showing up premature microservices architecture, which is like highly optimized system, try to start with a brute force, which is building a monolith and then breaking it down as you go. And a third would be thinking about the failure strategy, like what if, like what is your disaster recovery mechanism? How will you handle a failure? What will your application strategy? What happens if one component dies? How will you like transition a traffic from one region to another if the one region is getting some problems with it, right? So think about those kind of things, and it's always good to talk about it so that interviewer gets a sense that, hey, this guy is not just like building a system, he's thinking about when my system can fail and how I can handle those failure scenarios. And it gives like a optimistic thinking about the candidate that yes, he thinks about the failure, not just like all the good cases. Then one of the thing which I've seen people really liking when it comes to interview is that people think of like interviewer likes when a candidate thinks about multi-region strategy rather than just talking about like I build a service in one particular region, which is IAD or maybe SaaS and whatnot, and then slowly like how you uncovered the design based on the requirements and diving deep into one of the solution to show that yes, you understand the problem very well. That's why you were able to like draw all the puzzle pieces, but you were able to fit one right piece while showing that yes, I knew the problem and I was able to build a high level solution while showing how it will all work together by drawing one single piece in a detail. Yes, we can move to the next slide. This was more about like how the system design and coding should be handled. Now, after this, we will be talking about the most important round, which is like killer for a lot of candidates where they were able to do good at the coding and technical rounds, but behavioral was something where they failed. So Parminder will start with talking about what a behavioral round should look like and how people should be tackling this rather than just like merely answering the question of the interviewers. Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's where I wanted to start as well. That we, as a candidate, you have gone through two technical rounds or probably one or two system design rounds. So we start feeling like, okay, I feel like I have done enough and I have done really well. So I can take it light in the behavioral round, as Vasu rightly outlined, that this is one round where people take it light and it ends up spoiling their whole hard work that they have done in remaining 4 or 5 rounds before. So mostly the behavioral rounds are very, very situational. Interviewer is not going to give you ask for a specific answer. It is all according to like your preparation, how you have designed your answers and how you will be framing them. It all comes together. So star is actually a very known method now. Most of the companies, Amazon specifically, but other companies as well, are relying upon candidate using star method when they are asked behavioral questions. So let's quickly talk about first what is a star method, right? So star method is where let's say if I ask you a question, hey, person XYZ, can you explain me a scenario or a situation where you had to deep dive? So very simple question. The same question applies to all levels, be it level 5 or M1 or 65, depending on the companies, right? So question will remain the same from entry level till the director level, but the scale that you will explain, the situation that you will explain, the actions that you took, and the results and the output that you are going to talk about is going to immediately define it to the interviewer whether you are right fit for this level or not. So be very, very clear about how are you going to articulate your situation, and specify that, okay, day XYZ there was a situation this, and then once you clearly articulate the situation, then say, okay, there were 5 tasks that were identified, but I was given task X. right? Because it's all about I, it's not about we. As a team, we deliver a lot of things, but interviewer is interested in that situation, what is the task that was given to you? And on that task, be very, very specific on what are the actions that you took. So it's like you were able to understand a task, and then you were able to break it down into multiple smaller, or compartmentalize it, and then you were able to execute upon depending on the priority. So these are like clearly articulating your actions that you have taken. And then last but not the least is the result that you produce out of that task. And this is how a answer should be framed. And one, I'll say the a very good thing that I have used is try to make it candid, right? Because let's say if you are given a situation and, hey, can you explain me how will you handle a situation where your colleague is not supporting you? So this is like a behavioral question, right? There could be n number of answers, and you might have to pick one. So whenever you are trying to answer questions like these, try to make it like you have experienced this multiple times. Okay, so these type of, like for example, these type of situations keeps coming, so I'm going to take a reference of a situation that happened 3 months ago where a employee was doing X, and because of that I had to do Y, and which resulted in Z. So that's how you have to try to make it more of like you have already experienced these type of situation, and you are well aware of how to tackle them. So that's the magic of star. There are tons of materials online which are available for you to practice, like how do you deliver your answers, making sure you stick to the star method, practice it, articulate it, and for every question make sure you have 2 to 3 answers, so that in case the interviewer asks you the same situation again, then you are not repeating the answer that you have already given to the previous interviewer. So have 2 to 3 answers for each of the situations that you might have experienced. Vasu, you want to explain anything on the how the what is the expectation from the tech interviews for the star method?
Not in. I think you have covered everything that sort of like adds value to like clearing the behavioral interview. One thing that only that I would like to add is like whenever you're like appearing for these behavioral rounds, always prepare like multiple answers or stories from your background, and
Yeah.
it can be from your interpersonal experience during the college, building a team project, or working under a professor, or maybe at a research position at a university. Anything can be there. People often think that, hey, because I've not done any internship or any sort of like job experience, I might not have stories to share. But everybody has like some kind of experience working in a group project at a university and whatnot. And those are also perfectly fine for you to build an answer towards for. Some of the questions where people like interviewer ask for is like, tell me about a difficult time when you sort of like had to work in a team where people around you were not delivering or helping or contributing uh, the to the project the way you were contributing. And that's a great question for you to talk about. Maybe you were paired up with two random people from your class who are like not as good as you, and they are not trying to deliver anything. How you are like trying to assess that problem and come to us like able to navigate that is like what interviewer is looking for. Some of the bad examples for that would be like you are complaining to an interviewer that yes, I was placed with two people who were not contributing, and my work was that I used to go to my professor, complain about him so that he can change them and put them onto some different project and give me like some good candidates to pair up with me. That's a very bad answer to give. Like nobody wants to listen to complaints about why things are not moving fast and why it's not going. So those kind of answers are not like great. What I would recommend to answer at this kind of like question is that you talk about the situation. Yes, the situation was tough and it was very challenging. What you did was you intervened those people. You asked them like, why don't you work with me? If there is any problem that you are like having in order to understand the work that is assigned to you, maybe opening up with them and framing the answer that yes, I talked to a person who was shy, who was not delivering to the project, but while talking to him, he was able to explain me like the reason behind him not working, that because he was not understanding the thing. So I spend more time making him understand, and that way he understood the problem, and then he started delivering. So that shows the interviewer that yes, this person is like not just a single player, and he thinks about others and try to solve the interpersonal problems that he's having with people, building the understanding gap, bridging the gap between those people, and delivering the project as a team player. And that is how you should be like framing your answers, instead of like complaining, showing that these people are not working with me, they are not good enough. Try to like frame an answer where you come up as a savior and try to show that yes, I was able to navigate through a difficult situation, even though it was not easy, and even though it was not completely in my hand. I tried to understand the root cause of the problem. In this case, the person was not able to understand the problem. He was not good at studies. He was lacking the context from the previous classes. So I overspent time with him, went above and beyond to make him understand the course, give him some tuitions so that he can ramp up, and then he started delivering, and we were able to complete the project on time. So those kind of answers like adds a lot of value and a story and a content about how you as a candidate is applying for this job, and interviewer would be happy to hire you, because he knows in this tough situations where there are like multiple teammates, you are able to coach people around you, you are able to get things done, and you are a team player. And that's what your story formation in behavioral round should look like. Yes, Parminder, that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we have more or less covered the story theme and prepare story theme to prepare as well. I think you have fairly covered all of it. I have anything to add? That that's fine. Let's move over to the next one. We can think about the five silent killers that we have outlined here for the behavioral round, right? So let me just move it. Yeah, I think we generally like talking about the silent killers, right? So we have to talk about that individual contributor, so making use of I's instead of we, so making sure that whatever you are articulating in your story, the situation that you are defining, you only emphasize on what you did in that situation. Ignore about, yes, we always expect people to be the team players, but when you are giving that example, make sure it is all about you and not about the answers are not sounding about the team, right? And be very, very careful about the stories where you are articulating the failures, right? It is okay. It is, you will find a question from most of the interviews like, okay, tell me about a situation where you failed a project. So the interviewer is not trying to understand that how bigger of a project you failed and what problems it caused to the company, how much was the revenue impact and whatnot. But what interviewer is trying to understand from you at that particular situation is how did you recover from that situation, or actions that you took to learn from it, right? And did you repeat that mistake again in your future or not? So that is like, okay, how do you learn from your mistakes, one, and how do you learn from others mistakes? So that is the key articulation that interviewer is expecting from you, and there, right? And another thing that we would like to talk about is not asking the questions, right? So it's like you have you are asked a question from the interviewer, and interviewer is expecting that, okay, it has to be a two-way communication. It's not just the interviewer keep on asking questions and you are not even clarifying anything. So those type of things do become the silent killers for you. And then there is a screen error on coming on my side, Vasu. Like, can you take it over here? Let me go to the.
Yeah, so basically that's what we wanted to cover in this cracking the interview like session webinar. We'll just quickly move over to any questions if anybody have at the end. And yeah, feel free to connect us on LinkedIn if you need any referrals or any sort of like help with interview preparation. We can share our ADP list link with you guys as well, where we do mentor people in all sorts of like interview stages where if people want to give like mock interviews, we are there to help. If people need some kind of like help with understanding the interview or solve some technical problems with us, feel free to like reach out to on ADP list, and that will be a good platform for us to connect. But yeah, LinkedIn is also a place where you guys can reach out to us. Yeah, that's all we had today. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vasu. Thank you, Parminder. It was really nice having this interaction and this webinar with us. And recordings will be shared with each participants. I know some of the people couldn't join owing to the Mother's Day. So yeah, recordings will be shared to you on your email addresses in some time. And thank you for your time, Vasu. Thank you for your time, Parminder. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek, for hosting us.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.